through an election. And I can tell you that if you are number 3, number 4, number 5, there is a high possibility that even the vote that you will get in our electoral system as we know it will not give you the threshold to represent people as the official opposition leader. So it doesn't mean that if we craft the constitution in such a way that the aspirations of the people who vote for a presidential candidate who loses, then we'll be giving the winner the power to decide who sits in that office. It is the people who will make that decision.
But if we look at that argument, it therefore means that constitutional reform should be top of the agenda of either candidate or whichever candidate wins. But we've seen clearly that one side that could possibly emerge victorious today said that constitutional reform is not part of its agenda, it's not a priority. That the economy will be a priority. Azimio la Umoja have suggested that, constitutional reform could be part of the main agenda. But don't you think that therefore, there's still a lot of work to be done in as far as achieving what you're discussing?
I mean, definitely. And of course, people say certain things during electioneering period, during the campaigns. But they say a wise man changes his mind depending on the realities of the day. So while the political formation Kenya Kwanza was very clear that perhaps the constitution will not be a priority, I think just looking at the reality and the situation, will be persuaded at some point. I mean, in some way, that perhaps we need to have this conversation. And we just need to look at, for example, a business in the House, both the Senate and the National Assembly. As it stands, seems like Azimio la Umoja might have perhaps more numbers than Kenya Kwanza, maybe in the National Assembly and perhaps also in the Senate. And what does that mean? It means that there will be a lot of negotiations, conversations, and engagement between the two parties if we are to move the business, I mean, in the various houses and nationally forward. So there is a need for conversation. I think all of us agree that winner takes it all is something that has caused us a lot of problems and has delayed our progress. I think what we do not agree on is how do we cure it. And I think this is a conversation that we need to keep having, whether it is through amending the constitution or whether it is through having a legislative framework that will help us address that. I think it's a conversation that we need to keep having, because truly our democracy is not perfect. And so if it's not perfect, it means that there is still room for us to keep curing the challenges that keep affecting us and deterring us from moving forward.
And yeah, the split screen you're watching right now is trying to capture all the areas that we are looking at. Of course, the main focus is on the Bomas of Kenya National Tallying Center. And we've also been monitoring the kind of activity at the residences or where the candidates are domiciled currently. But we can see the kind of activity from the Deputy President's residence, the convoy very first approaching the area where the Bomas of Kenya is, the kind of activity on the other end where Raila Odinga's office within Karen is, not much activity. You can see 1 or 2 vehicles driving in. But yeah, in the next 2 minutes or so, we'll be sure whether or not the Deputy President was heading to the Bomas of Kenya. As you continue counting now, it's now 15 minutes.
He's taking a longer route.
That to me looks a little bit interesting is the amount of anxiety and the waiting mechanism. And since 9th of August, I've actually been wondering whether there could be possibilities of innovation, you know, the place of ICT in this kind of processes. Because our elections is largely manual. Of course, we have a bit of digitization through the KIMS identification and all that. And then this time around, IEBC has more or less tried to bring in mechanisms to enhance the digital tallying. But how possible could it be that we can be thinking about online voting? Because if I have your number and I want to send you some thousands, I just do your number, and I have that increased trust that you will actually get that money, and in case there is a recourse, I can call you and check, have you received your money, and I can follow through mechanisms to get it back. Is it really enough to keep Kenyans waiting for 7 days with all this anxiety? Businesses, at least for the last 3 days, since voting were closed, and people were like, until Kenyans decided it's about them looking for jobs, let's go on with our businesses. But is it possible that IEBC could probably think through benchmarking mechanisms to learn through from some jurisdictions on how we can be able to enhance our voting so that people don't have to travel? Interesting that a friend of mine tells me that IEBC had 12 tallying centers abroad, and that the people in the US only had one in Washington, D.C. And if you imagine the physical area coverage of the United States of America, and that people in Louisiana or Illinois and all those other places have to travel miles and thousands of miles into Washington to just cast a vote. First of all, you have to travel to the embassy to verify through the registrar that was posted there that you are a voter, and then wait for another 3 to 4 months. Of course, this time IEBC posted the registrars a little bit late into the election, and then travel back to go and vote. I think this election is also giving us chances and opportunities for us to be able to look at certain things that we could enhance as improvements. And one of those things to me, Fred, looks like the place of ICT, particularly when it comes to voting. Of course, we have a huge trust deficit in this country, and that's partly why maybe we do the physical paper and pen casting of our votes, and even sometimes people have to sit there like observers to check whether we are doing the right thing, But is it possible that we could strengthen our electoral processes and therefore enhance our democratic processes by looking at largely the place of ICT in this particular process? People didn't have to go to Bomas to sit there for 8 days waiting for tallies. This form has arrived. Returning officers sleeping on desks for 4 to 6 days waiting to be serviced and waiting to be cleared. I think as a country we should probably learn.
The Bomas of Kenya, the National Tallying Center, in anticipation of that declaration of the presidential election results, which is at about 10 minutes or so. So yes, anxiety and excitement is building.
Were you a timekeeper? As soon as they were declared winners and they came in, then hell broke loose. So it's actually the politicians who cause this trouble. Even the issue about winner takes all, in fact, the people who complain are politicians. We must accept that in a presidential system, when you're running for an election, you will win or you will lose. There'll be two outcomes. Even if you have a runoff, there'll be two outcomes. So if you have lost, go prepare yourself. It's going to give you a break of 4 or 5 years. Go prepare yourself again. There must be no need to create a position. Or if you think that you must create a position, then go for a parliamentary system. If you lose, you become the leader of the opposition. But you are talking about remedies. The remedy is allocation of resources. Allocation of resources. And that is supposed to be the responsibility of the National Assembly, to ensure that resources have been allocated in a manner that every single Kenyan benefits from this tax. Now, the reason why some people become nervous that who is going to be declared a president, because, for instance, there are folks who think that if their son is declared president, then there's going to be multiple projects in their village, which actually tends to be the case. But the National Assembly can cure that and ensure that these resources are distributed across the nation.
Mm-hmm. And Hezbon, you appear very anxious because...
I just think the music is fairly entertaining. From the dancing, I think we also want to concentrate on the music. We could be missing a lot that guys at home are getting. But I agree with Dismas that leadership is just about distribution and allocation of resources, political leadership for that matter. But I would say, ultimately, there is nothing, whether we resort to technology, because we've done enough as far as technology is concerned, or we go back to marbles or Mlolongo system. I think the most important thing is how do we ensure that the presidency is not as contested as it is.
Okay.
Make it less contestable, but give Parliament the power to make more, decisions on distribution and allocation of resources.
Let's now go to the Bomas of Kenya, where the pictures there appear very interesting. I can see one of the elected leaders there, Sumra, dancing quite animatedly. And you were talking about the music. Let's listen into what's happening at the Bomas of Kenya, the National Center, as we anticipate the declaration of the presidential election results in about 7 minutes now.
Chango ya Kenya. Wapi vigelegele? Twende. Katika. Oh, shangilia, Yesu anaweza. Oh, shangilia, Yesu anaweza. Shangilia, Yesu kiongozi. Oh, Yesu kiongozi. Shangilia, Yesu kiongozi. Shangilia, Yesu atupenda.
Kenya yetu nchi nzuri,
nchi yako, nchi yangu, twaipenda daima.
Kenya yetu nchi nzuri,
nchi yako, nchi yangu, twaipenda daima.
Mwito wetu harambee, tuijenge Kenya.
Nchi yako, nchi yangu, twaipenda daima.
Mwito wetu harambee, tuijenge Kenya.
Nchi yako, nchi yangu, twaipenda daima.
Wenzangu mwananchi,
tuunganeni mkono, tuijenge taifa.
Wenzangu mwananchi,
tuunganeni mkono, tuijenge taifa.
Sote tuna wajibu kuijenga Kenya.
Nchi yako, nchi yangu, twaipenda daima.
Sote tuna wajibu kuijenga Kenya.
Nchi yako, nchi yangu, twaipenda daima.
Viongozi wetu wote,
uongoze watu wetu kwa amani daima.
Viongozi wetu wote,
uongoze watu wetu kwa amani daima.
Mmepewa uwezo wa kusimamia
na kulinda haki yetu kwa amani daima.
Mmepewa uwezo wa kusimamia
na kulinda haki yetu kwa amani daima.
Ndugu zetu wanajeshi,
uilinde nchi yetu siku zote daima.
Ndugu zetu wanajeshi,
uilinde nchi yetu siku zote daima.
Tusimame imara, tuilinde Kenya.
Nchi yako, nchi yangu, twaipenda daima.
tusimame imara, tuilinde Kenya. Ndugu zetu tujiunge pamoja, akina baba tujiunge pamoja, akina mama tujiunge pamoja, ndugu zetu tujiunge pamoja, akina baba tujiunge pamoja, akina mama tujiunge pamoja. Tuishangilie Kenya, taifa letu tukufu, Kenya tunayoipenda, Kenya nchi tunayoipenda, Kenya nchi tunayoipenda. Twajivunia sana tukijiita wa Kenya, nchi yenye baraka, Kenya nchi yenye baraka, Kenya nchi yenye baraka. Kenya makao yetu ni nchi ya kupendeza, kamwe hatutaiacha, kamwe Kenya hatutaiacha, kamwe Kenya hatutaiacha. Anayependa Kenya ni yule mwenye kutenda haki kwa watu wote, mtu mwenye kutenda haki, mtu mwenye kutenda haki. Na ukipenda Kenya ujitengane na mambo yenye kuvunja amani, hatutaki matata Kenya, hatutaki matata Kenya. Wenzangu, Kenya kipenzi chetu, hatutaiacha milele daima. Wenzangu, Kenya kipenzi chetu, hatutaiacha milele daima. Kenya kipenzi chetu, nchi yenye upendo, hatutaacha Kenya daima na milele. Kenya kipenzi chetu, hatutaiacha milele daima. Wenzangu, Kenya kipenzi chetu, hatutaiacha milele daima. Na tumeapa sote wananchi wa Kenya kutumikia Kenya daima na milele. Kenya kipenzi chetu, hatutaiacha milele daima. Wenzangu, Kenya kipenzi chetu, hatutaiacha milele daima. Kenya ni mama yetu, tena ni baba yetu, hatutaacha Kenya daima na milele. Kenya kipenzi chetu, hatutaiacha milele daima. Wenzangu, Kenya kipenzi hatutaiacha Kenya nchi yangu. Mimi ni mwana Kenya daima, na nikienda ng'ambo nitarudi. Mimi ni mwana Kenya daima, sitadanganywa kamwe na wageni. Mimi ni mwana Kenya daima, wala sitapotoshwa na wabaya. Mimi ni mwana Kenya daima, sitaiacha Kenya nchi yangu. Na nikienda ng'ambo nitarudi. Sitadanganywa kamwe na wageni, wala sitapotoshwa na wabaya.
Kenya daima.
Wenzangu,
Kenya kipenzi chetu, hatutaiacha milele daima.
wenzangu,
Kenya kipenzi chetu, hatutaiacha milele daima.
tushangilie Kenya, taifa letu tukufu, Kenya tunayoipenda, Kenya nchi tunayoipenda, Kenya nchi tunayoipenda. Uongozi maana yake,
Uongozi ndio uwezo uliopewa na watu
wa kuwahudumia
mahitaji yao
na kushughulikia
maslahi yao.
uongozi watoka wapi?
Uongozi watoka kwake Baba Mwenyezi Mungu,
Wawateule wake
aliyewateua
waongoza watu
kwa mapenzi yake.
tangu tupate uhuru.
Katika nchi ya Kenya tumebarikiwa sana,
Kupata viongozi
kwa busara sana,
twatoa shukrani,
kwa Mwenyezi Mungu.
nasi wananchi Kenya
Sote tunalo
tukufu, Kenya tunayoipenda. Tushangilie Kenya, taifa letu tukufu, Kenya tunayoipenda, Kenya nchi tunayoipenda, Kenya nchi tunayoipenda. Twajivunia sana tukijiita wa Kenya, nchi yenye baraka. Twajivunia sana tukijiita wa Kenya, nchi yenye baraka. Kenya nchi yenye baraka, Kenya nchi yenye baraka. Tumekomboa Kenya, taifa letu tukufu, tumebadili mwendo. Tumekomboa Kenya, taifa letu tukufu, tumebadili mwendo. Tutane na mambo yenye kuvunja amani, na ukipenda Kenya ujitengane na mambo yenye kuvunja amani. Hatutaki matata Kenya, hatutaki matata Kenya. Wenzangu,
Kenya kipenzi chetu, hatutaiacha milele daima.
wenzangu,
Kenya perish you, we thank our God for the great nation Africa. We cherish you, we nation Africa. We must of our citizens and the rule of law. Wote tudumishe amani Kenya, neno lake Mungu latuhimiza kupendana. Tushikane mikono pamoja sote wa Mungu, tujenge Kenya moja, nchi ya urithi wetu. Tushikane mikono pamoja sote wa Mungu, moja nchi ya urithi wetu. Wana Kenya wote tudumishe amani Kenya, neno lake Mungu latuhimiza kupendana. tudumishe amani Kenya. Neno lake Mungu latuhimiza kupendana. Kwani hadi bara kusini na magharibi tuachia Mungu. Kwani hadi bara kusini, wana Kenya wote tudumishe amani Kenya. Neno lake Mungu latuhimiza kupendana. Wana Kenya wote tudumishe amani Kenya. Neno lake Mungu latuhimiza kupendana. Neno lake Mungu latuhimiza kupendana. Neno lake Mungu latuhimiza kupendana. Neno lake Mungu latuhimiza Kina mama